The Velthrani Empire had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. They were tall creatures with scales like polished metal and eyes that glowed with cold intelligence. They believed in strength above all things. They believed that the weak existed only to serve the strong. They had conquered 17 star systems and crushed every species that dared to stand against them. When the Velthrani defeated the Karathi people in the great battle at Nexus Prime, they did not feel pride or joy. They felt only the satisfaction of removing another obstacle from their path. The Karathi had been a peaceful species, artists and musicians who had never wanted war. But they had resources the Velthrani wanted, so they had to be destroyed. After the battle, the Velthrani soldiers searched the Karathi ships and found something unexpected. Hidden in the lower decks, protected by the last surviving adults, were 2,000 infants. The Karathi had known they could not win the battle. They had known they would die, but they had hoped in their final moments that someone might save their children. The Velthrani soldiers brought news of the infants to High Commander Xyleth. He sat on his command throne, a massive chair made from the bones of conquered enemies, and he considered the problem. Killing the infants would be easy. It would take only a single order, a single command, and the problem would disappear. But Xyleth was not just a warrior. He was also a politician. He saw an opportunity. The humans of Earth had recently joined the galactic community. They were a young species, barely a few thousand years old, who had only discovered faster-than-light travel in the last century. The other great powers of the galaxy looked down on them. They called humans soft and emotional. They mocked the way humans cared for their young, the way they wasted resources on the sick and the old, the way they believed that every life had value. Xyleth smiled, and it was not a pleasant sight. His teeth were sharp, and his eyes were cold. "Send the infants to Earth," he commanded. "Let the humans deal with this burden. They claim to value all life. Let us test that claim. They will fail, of course. They will beg us to take the creatures back. And when they do, the entire galaxy will see how weak and pathetic they truly are." His officers obeyed without question. They loaded the 2,000 Karathi infants onto a transport ship, along with enough supplies to keep them alive for the journey. They programmed the ship to travel to Earth's solar system, and they attached a message written in the common tongue of the galaxy, a gift for the humans. "May you enjoy the burden of feeding mouths that will never thank you. May these worthless remnants remind you of your place in the hierarchy of civilized species. We await your inevitable surrender." The ship launched into the darkness between stars, carrying its precious cargo toward an uncertain future. 3 weeks later, the transport ship arrived at Earth's main orbital station. It was a busy place, full of cargo vessels and passenger ships from a dozen different worlds. The station commander, Admiral Patricia Lane, was in her office reviewing supply reports when her aide rushed in with the news. Patricia was 53 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen both the best and worst that the universe had to offer. She had served in Earth's space fleet for 30 years. She had fought pirates and negotiated trade deals. She had welcomed alien ambassadors and said goodbye to friends who never came home. But she had never faced anything like this. She stood at the observation deck, watching the Velthrani transport ship dock at the station. It was an ugly vessel, all sharp angles and dark metal, designed to intimidate rather than to welcome. Beside her, Commander Daniel Griffin read the Velthrani message aloud. His voice was steady, but she could see the anger in his eyes. "A gift for the humans," Daniel repeated. "They are mocking us." "Yes," Patricia agreed. "They are. What do we do?" Patricia watched the docking clamps lock into place. Through the windows of the transport ship, she could see movement. Small shapes, barely visible at this distance. 2,000 children, abandoned by their conquerors, sent to a strange world as a joke. "We do what humans have always done," Patricia said. "We take care of those who need help. Get me every doctor on this station. Contact the Planetary Council. And find me someone who speaks Karathi. Those children are probably terrified, and I want them to hear a friendly voice." Daniel nodded and hurried away to carry out her orders. Patricia walked to the docking bay. The airlock opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure, and she stepped inside the transport ship. The smell hit her first. The smell of too many bodies in too small a space. The smell of fear and waste and desperation. The Velthrani had provided basic life support, but nothing more. No comfort, no kindness, no care. The main cargo hold had been converted into a makeshift nursery. Row after row of simple containers, each one holding a single infant. The Karathi babies were small, smaller than human newborns, with skin that seemed to shift and change color as Patricia watched. Some were gray, the color of fear. Others were dark blue, the color of sadness. A few, the ones who had noticed her arrival, were shifting to pale yellow, color of curiosity. Patricia knelt beside the nearest container. The infant inside looked up at her with eyes that were too large and too knowing for such a small creature. Its skin flickered through several colors before settling on a soft purple. "Hello there," Patricia said softly. "I know you do not understand me. I know you are scared, but I want you to know that you are safe now. No one is going to hurt you. No one is going to send you away. You are home." The infant made a small sound, something between a chirp and a coo. Its skin shifted from purple to a gentle pink. Patricia did not know what that color meant, but she hoped it was something good. Behind her, the first of the medical teams arrived. Doctors and nurses in white uniforms, carrying equipment and supplies. They spread out through the cargo hold, checking on the infants, making notes. Providing care. Dr. Kevin Marsh, the station's chief medical officer, appeared at Patricia's side. He was a young man, barely 40, with kind eyes and steady hands. 2,000 infants, Kevin said, looking around the cargo hold. "This is going to be the biggest medical operation in Earth's history. Can we do it?" Patricia asked. Kevin smiled. "Admiral, we are humans. We have been taking care of children since before we discovered fire. We have been adopting the abandoned and protecting the helpless since the beginning of our history. The Velthrani think this is a burden. They do not understand us at all." Patricia stood up and looked around the cargo hold. 2,000 infants, 2,000 lives, 2,000 futures waiting to be written.
Ow.
She agreed. They do not, but they will learn. She turned to face her crew, the doctors and nurses and officers who had gathered to help. "Let us get to work," she said. "We have children to care for." The news spread across Earth like fire through dry grass. Within hours of the transport ship's arrival, every news station on the planet was broadcasting the story. 2,000 alien infants, abandoned by their conquerors, sent to Earth as an insult. The Velthrani expected humanity to fail. They expected complaints and chaos and cries for help. They did not get what they expected. Linda Morrison, the Secretary of Global Welfare, stood before the United Earth Council in Geneva. The great chamber was filled with representatives from every nation, and the galleries above were packed with journalists and observers. The whole world was watching. "The Velthrani Empire has given us a challenge," Linda said, her voice calm and clear. "They have sent us 2,000 children and told us that we are too weak to care for them. They have called us soft and sentimental. They have said that our compassion is a flaw." She paused and looked around the chamber. "Say our compassion is our greatest strength." "Oh." Chamber erupted in applause. Linda raised her hand for silence and continued. "Within 12 hours of the announcement, we received over 800,000 applications from families who want to adopt these children. 800,000 families from every country on Earth, who open their hearts and their homes to strangers from another world. Our servers crashed 3 times trying to handle the traffic. We have never seen anything like this." She gestured to the screen behind her, which displayed a map of Earth covered in glowing dots. Hospitals across 6 continents have volunteered specialized care. Universities have offered research support. The Karathi diaspora, the survivors who escaped the Velthrani conquest, have come forward to help with cultural education. They want these children to know their heritage, their language, their history. A representative from India raised her hand. "Secretary Morrison, how will we handle the logistics? 2,000 children is a significant number." Linda smiled. "Representative Singh, I appreciate your concern, but I want to put this in perspective. Earth has a population of 12 billion people. 2,000 children represents less than a fraction of our population. We have the resources. We have the expertise. We have the will. The only question is whether we have the organization. She looked around the chamber again. I am pleased to report that we do. The Global Adoption Initiative has already begun processing applications. We have established priority criteria based on family stability, cultural sensitivity, and access to specialized medical care. The first placements will begin within the month. Up on the orbital station, the medical teams were working around the clock. Dr. Kevin Marsh had not slept in 2 days. But he could not bring himself to rest. There was too much to do, too many children who needed help. The Karathi infants were remarkable creatures. Their color-changing skin was not just for display. It was a complex communication system that allowed them to express emotions and intentions without words. Kevin had spent hours learning to read the patterns. Gray meant fear. Blue meant sadness. Yellow meant curiosity. Pink meant comfort. Green meant hunger. Orange meant excitement. Purple meant confusion. And gold, he had discovered, meant love. He watched as Nurse Amy Hudson cradled one of the smaller infants in her arms. The baby had been gray when they first found her, so scared that she would not eat or sleep. Amy had held her for hours, singing soft songs and speaking gentle words. Slowly, gradually, the gray had faded to blue, then to purple, then to a soft pink now, as Kevin watched. The infant's skin flickered with flecks of gold. "She is bonding with you," Kevin said quietly. Amy looked up, tears in her eyes. "I know I should not get attached. There are so many of them, and I cannot adopt them all. But she is just so small, and she was so afraid." Kevin put his hand on her shoulder. "Getting attached is not a weakness, Amy. It is what makes us human, and these children need to see that. They need to know that they can trust us, that they can love us and be loved in return." Amy nodded and looked down at the infant in her arms. "I've already submitted my application. My husband agrees. We want to adopt her." Kevin smiled. "I will make sure your application gets priority review." Across the station, similar scenes were playing out in every corner. Scientists who had come to study the infants found themselves falling in love with them instead. Engineers who had been assigned to maintain the temporary nursery stayed late to rock babies to sleep. Even the hard-bitten security officers, men and women who had faced combat and danger without flinching, could be found making silly faces to coax. A smile from a frightened child. The Velthrani had expected humans to see the infants as a burden. They had expected resentment and complaints. They had not understood that humans did not see children as burdens. Humans saw children as hope. On Earth, the response was even more overwhelming. The adoption applications continued to pour in, but they were not the only form of support. Toy companies donated millions of dollars worth of products. Clothing manufacturers produced special garments designed for Karathi physiology. Food scientists worked to create nutrition formulas that would meet the infant's unique dietary needs. Schools began developing curriculum to help the children integrate into human society while maintaining their cultural identity. A grandmother in Brazil knitted 2,000 tiny blankets, one for each child. A school in Japan made 2,000 origami cranes, a symbol of hope and healing. A choir in Nigeria recorded a lullaby in the Karathi language learned from survivors of the conquest, and sent it to the orbital station to be played in the nursery. The whole world was working together, united by a common purpose. 3 weeks after the transport ship arrived, Secretary Morrison held another press conference. This time, she was not alone. Beside her stood a Karathi woman named Salaith, one of the survivors who had escaped the Velthrani conquest. Salaith's skin was a complex pattern of blue and gold, sadness mixed with hope. "When I heard what the Velthrani had done," Salaith said, her voice thick with emotion, "I wept. I wept for the children who had lost everything, just as I had lost everything. I thought they would be alone in the universe, orphans with no one to care for them." She paused and looked out at the assembled journalists. "I was wrong. The humans have shown me that family is not just about blood. It is about choice. It is about love." These children have lost their biological families, but they have gained something precious. They have gained a world full of people who chose to love them, who chose to protect them, who chose to make them part of something bigger than themselves. A journalist raised her hand. Selaith, what do you think the Velthrani will say when they learn how humanity has responded? Selaith's skin flickered with orange, the color of defiant joy. I think they will be confused, she said. The Velthrani do not understand love. They do not understand sacrifice. They do not understand why someone would give everything to protect a stranger. But perhaps in time, they will learn. Perhaps by watching humanity, they will see that there is another way to live. A better way. She looked at Secretary Morrison and smiled. And if they do not learn, then that is their loss. These children will grow up surrounded by love. They will become strong and wise and kind. And one day, they will help build a galaxy where no child is ever abandoned again. The press conference ended, but the work continued. Day by day, week by week, the 2,000 Karathi infants were matched with families and sent to their new homes. Each departure was celebrated with tears and laughter. Each child carried with them the hopes and dreams of two worlds. The Velthrani had sent a burden. Humanity had received a gift. 6 months had passed since the transport ship arrived at Earth. The 2,000 Karathi infants had all been placed with families across the planet. They were learning to walk and talk, to laugh and play, to trust and love. The gray color of fear had faded from their skin, replaced by the pink of comfort and the gold of belonging. High Commander Xyleth sat in his throne room on the Velthrani homeworld, waiting for news of humanity's failure. He had expected it to come within weeks. He had expected desperate messages, begging for help. He had expected the humans to admit that they could not handle the burden he had placed upon them. Instead, he received a diplomatic vessel. The human ship was small and unarmed, designed for peaceful missions rather than war. It requested permission to dock at the orbital station above the Velthrani capital. Xyleth granted the request, curious despite himself. Perhaps the humans had finally come to surrender. Perhaps they had finally learned their place. Ambassador George Palmer walked into the throne room with the confidence of someone who had nothing to fear. He was an older man, with white hair and a face lined by decades of experience. He had served Earth's diplomatic corps for 30 years, negotiating with species far more dangerous than the Velthrani. He was not easily intimidated. Beside him walked to aides. Carrying a small box and a data crystal, Xyleth looked down from his throne, his scales gleaming in the artificial light. You have come to beg for our assistance. I expected this moment. Humanity is not equipped to care for so many alien creatures. You have finally realized your limitations. George smiled politely. Actually, High Commander, we have come to thank you. The translator struggled with the word. Xyleth's secondary eyes twitched in confusion. Thank us. For what? For the children, of course. George gestured to his aides, who stepped forward and presented the box. The people of Earth have prepared a gift in return for your generosity. 2,000 thank you cards, one from each family that adopted a Karathi child. Xyleth stared at the box as if it might contain a weapon. This is some kind of trick. No trick, High Commander. Just gratitude. George opened the box and removed one of the cards. It was made of paper, actual paper from trees grown on Earth. And it was covered with colorful drawings and handwritten messages. This one is from the Martinez family in Mexico. They adopted a little girl they named Luna. She is learning to walk now. Her skin turns bright orange whenever she sees the family dog. They wanted you to know how happy she has made them. He placed the card on the steps leading up to the throne and removed another. This one is from the Kowalski family in Poland. They adopted twin boys they named Adam and Peter. The boys have become inseparable from their older human sister. She reads them stories every night before bed. Their skin turns gold when she holds them. Another card joined the first. This one is from the Nakamura family in Japan. They adopted a boy they named Hiro. He has already learned to say 3 words in Japanese. His favorite food is rice porridge. His favorite color is blue, which is interesting because his skin turns blue when he is thinking hard about something. George continued placing cards on the steps, one after another, each one accompanied by a brief story. The Martinez family, the Kowalski family, the Nakamura family, the Okonkwo family in Nigeria, the Singh family in India, the Thompson family in Australia, the Garcia family in Argentina, the Kim family in South Korea, 2,000 families, 2,000 stories, 2,000 children who had found homes. Xylith watched in silence as the pile of cards grew. His officers stood around the edges of the throne room, equally silent, equally confused. This was not how defeated species behaved. This was not how the weak responded to those who had humiliated them. When the box was finally empty, George presented the data crystal. This contains video messages from each family, he explained. You can watch them at your leisure. You will see the children playing, laughing, learning. You will see them surrounded by people who love them. You will see that your gift has been received with joy, not resentment. Xylith finally found his voice. Why? Why would you do this? These are not your children. They are not even your species. Why would you waste your resources on creatures that will never serve your empire? George considered the question carefully before answering. Hi, Commander. I think there has been a misunderstanding. You sent us those children because you believed that caring for them would weaken us. You believed that compassion is a flaw, that empathy is a liability, that love is a burden. He shook his head. You were wrong. Caring for those children has not weakened us. It has strengthened us. It has united our planet in a common purpose. It has reminded us of what matters most. It has shown us, and the entire galaxy, who we really are. He looked up at Xylith, meeting the High Commander's gaze without flinching. We are humans. We take care of those who need help. We open our homes to strangers. We love children who are not our own. This is not a weakness. This is our greatest strength, and now the galaxy knows it. Xylith was silent for a long moment. Then he leaned forward on his throne. You speak of strength, he said slowly, but strength is measured in ships and weapons, in armies and conquests. What strength do you have? Your fleet is small. Your technology is primitive. You have no empire, no colonies, no conquered worlds. By every measure that matters, you are weak. George smiled again, and this time there was something almost pitying in his expression. High Commander, the Korathi were a peaceful people. They had art and music and philosophy. They had families who loved each other and communities that cared for their members. You destroyed them because they were weak by your measure of strength, he paused. But their children survived. Their children are now growing up on Earth, surrounded by love. Their children will learn our languages and our sciences. They will carry the memory of their people forward into the future. In 100 years, in 1,000 years, the Korathi culture will still exist because we chose to preserve it. George gestured around the throne room. What will the Velthrani leave behind, High Commander? When your empire finally falls, as all empires eventually fall, what will remain? Conquered worlds that will celebrate your defeat? Enslaved species that will erase your memory? Enemies who will curse your name? He shook his head. Ash. We may be weak by your measure, but we will be remembered with love. Can you say the same? Xylith did not answer. He sat on his throne, surrounded by the cards from 2,000 families, and he did not know what to say. George bowed slightly. We hope this gesture of goodwill will open the door to future diplomatic relations. Perhaps in time, the Velthrani will see the value in cooperation rather than conquest. We remain ready to talk whenever you are ready to listen. He turned and walked out of the throne room, his aides following behind him. Xylith sat alone for a long time after the humans left. He looked at the pile of cards on the steps of his throne. He thought about the video messages on the data crystal. He thought about 2,000 children growing up on a distant world, loved and cared for and happy. He thought about his own children, raised in military academies, taught to fight and conquer and dominate. He thought about the Velthrani way of life, the endless competition, the constant struggle for power, the belief that strength was the only virtue that mattered, And for the first time in his long life, High Commander Xyleth wondered if he had been wrong. He picked up one of the cards, the one from the Martinez family. The drawings were crude, made by human children who had welcomed an alien sister into their family. The message was simple. "Thank you for sending us, Luna. We love her very much." Xyleth stared at the card until the lights in the throne room dimmed for the night cycle. Then he placed it carefully in a drawer in his personal quarters, where no one else would see it. He did not throw it away. 15 years had passed since the day the transport ship arrived at Earth. The 2,000 Korathi. Infants had grown into 2,000 young adults, and they had become something that no one had expected. They called themselves the Bridge Generation because they stood between two worlds, two cultures, two ways of life. They were artists and engineers, scientists and teachers, doctors and musicians. They spoke human languages with the accents of their home countries. But they also spoke Korathi, learned from the survivors who had become their honorary aunts and uncles. Their skins still changed color with their emotions, but now those colors were influenced by human expressions as well. They had created something new, a blend of two civilizations that was greater than either one alone. Maya was one of them. She had been born on the transport ship during the long journey from the Korathi homeworld to Earth. Her adoptive parents, Carlos and Elena Martinez, had named her after the ancient human word for illusion. Because her arrival had seemed too good to be true, she had grown up in a small town in Mexico, surrounded by love and warmth and family. Now she stood on the bridge of the starship Humanity's Promise, wearing the uniform of Earth's space fleet. Her skin was a calm green, the color of confidence and readiness. She was 25 years old. She was the communications officer on one of humanity's most advanced vessels. Commander Violet Park stood beside her, reviewing the tactical display. Violet was 43 years old, a veteran of a dozen space missions, and one of the most respected officers in the fleet. She had requested Maya specifically for her crew, recognizing the young woman's talents. "Report," Violet said. Maya studied her console. "We are receiving a distress signal from Velthrani space. Their home world is under attack." The bridge fell silent. Everyone remembered what the Velthrani had done 15 years ago. Everyone remembered the transport ship and the abandoned children and the cruel message that had accompanied them.
Ow.
"Who is attacking them?" Violet asked. Maya worked her controls, translating the Velthrani transmission. "The Sithax Collective. They are a machine intelligence from the Outer Rim. According to these reports, they have already destroyed 3 star systems. The Velthrani fleet is outnumbered and outgunned. The Sithax were a nightmare that the galaxy had hoped would never come. They were machines without conscience, without mercy, without any goal except expansion and consumption. They did not negotiate. They did not make treaties. They simply destroyed everything in their path and used the raw materials to build more of themselves." Lieutenant Commander Jack Murray, the tactical officer, shook his head. "The Velthrani have been our enemies since first contact. They tried to humiliate us. They threw away children like garbage. Why should we help them?" It was a fair question. Many humans felt the same way. The Velthrani had never apologized for what they had done. They had never shown any sign of changing their ways. They had continued to conquer and dominate just as they had always done. Maya turned from her console. Her skin flickered through several colors before settling on a determined orange. "Permission to speak freely, Commander." Violet nodded. Maya looked at her fellow officers. "I was one of those children. I was thrown away like garbage, as Lieutenant Commander Murray said. The Velthrani sent me to Earth because they believed I was worthless. They believed that caring for me would be a burden that would weaken humanity." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "But humanity did not see me as a burden. They saw me as a person. They gave me a family, an education, a future. They showed me that my worth was not determined by where I came from, but by who I chose to become." Her skin shifted to a warm gold. "If we abandon the Velthrani now, we become what they thought we were. We become a species that only helps those who help us, that only shows compassion to those who deserve it. But that is not who we are. That is not what my parents taught me. That is not what humanity stands for." She looked at Commander Violet. We should help them because helping is what we do. Not because they deserve it, but because we are better than they think we are. Because showing mercy to an enemy is the greatest victory of all. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Then Jack Murray nodded slowly. She is right, he admitted. I do not like the Valthrani. I probably never will. But if we let them be destroyed by the Sithax, we are no better than they are. Violet smiled. I was hoping someone would say that. She turned to the helm officer. Contact Fleet Command. Tell them we are requesting permission to assist the Valthrani. And get me Admiral Griffin on a secure channel. Admiral Daniel Griffin, now the commander of Earth's combined fleet, appeared on the main screen. He was older now, his hair gray, and his face lined with decades of responsibility. But his eyes were still sharp, and his voice was still strong. Commander Park, I assume you have seen the Valthrani distress signal? Yes, Admiral. We are requesting permission to render assistance. Daniel smiled. Permission granted. The Council voted unanimously. We are sending everything we can spare. The Valthrani may have been our enemies, but the Sithax are a threat to everyone. If they destroy the Valthrani, they will come for us next. He paused. Besides, humanity does not abandon people in need, even if those people once abandoned our children. The fleet gathered at the edge of Valthrani space. Humanity's promise led a task force of 20 ships, the largest military deployment in Earth's history. They were joined by vessels from the Korathi diaspora, survivors who had built new lives on human worlds, but had never forgotten their heritage. They were joined by ships from other species as well, civilizations that had watched humanity care for the Korathi children and had been inspired by their example. Maya sat at her console, monitoring communications from the Valthrani defenders. Their fleet was in disarray. The Sithax had destroyed half their ships in the first wave of attacks. The survivors were scattered and demoralized, fighting a desperate rearguard action to protect their home world. The Valthrani commander is requesting our terms, Maya reported. Violet raised an eyebrow. Terms? They want to know what we demand in exchange for our help. Territory, resources, political concessions. The bridge officers exchanged glances. It was a reasonable question. In the cold calculus of galactic politics, no one helped anyone without expecting something in return. Violet stood and walked to Maya's station. Open a channel to the Valthrani commander. Maya complied, and the face of a Valthrani officer appeared on the screen. He was young for his species, probably no more than a century old, and his scales were dull with exhaustion and fear. Human vessel, he said, you have received our request. What are your terms? Violet looked at the screen for a long moment before answering. Our terms are these, she said. We will fight beside you against the Sithax. We will defend your homeworld as if it were our own. We will sacrifice our ships and our lives to protect your people. She paused. And when the battle is over, we will leave. We will not demand territory. We will not demand resources. We will not demand anything at all. The Valthrani officer stared at her in disbelief. That is impossible. No one helps without expecting payment. This must be a trick. Violet smiled. No trick. Just humanity. She looked at Maya, and her smile widened. We learned a long time ago that the best way to defeat an enemy is to make them a friend. The Sithax cannot be negotiated with. They cannot be reasoned with. They can only be fought, and we would rather fight beside you than against you. She straightened her uniform. Now, shall we discuss battle plans, or would you like to continue arguing about our motives? The Valthrani officer was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Very well, human. We will fight together. But I still do not understand you, Violet laughed. That is all right. Sometimes we do not understand ourselves, but we always know what is right. She turned to her crew. All hands, battle stations. Today we show the galaxy what humanity is made of. The Battle of Velthrin Prime lasted 18 hours. It was the longest and bloodiest engagement in the history of the galaxy. The Sithax Collective had sent a fleet of over 1,000 ships, each one bristling with weapons and filled with endless waves of combat drones. They had expected to sweep through the Velthrani defenses and consume the planet within a day. They had not expected the humanities. Promise led the charge into the heart of the Sithax formation. Commander Violet Park stood on the bridge, calling out orders with calm precision as explosions rocked the ship. Lieutenant Commander Jack Murray coordinated weapons fire with mathematical accuracy. And Communications Officer Maya kept the Allied fleet connected, translating between human and Velthrani and a dozen other languages in real time. The battle was brutal. Ships were destroyed on both sides. Brave men and women gave their lives to hold the line. At one point, a Scythax destroyer broke through the defenses and headed straight for the Velthrani capital city. A human cruiser, the distant horizon, intercepted it. Captain Samuel Wright knew his ship was no match for the destroyer. He ordered his crew to evacuate in escape pods, then piloted the cruiser into a collision course himself. The explosion lit up the sky above the Velthrani capital. Millions of Velthrani looked up and saw a human sacrifice himself to save them. When the Scythox finally retreated, they left behind the wreckage of 600 ships. The Allied fleet had lost half their number as well. Humanity's Promise had taken heavy damage, her hull scarred and blackened by weapons fire. But she was still flying, and the Velthrani homeworld was still standing. High Commander Xyleth stood in the ruins of his command center, staring out through a shattered window at the sky above. He was old now, ancient by the standards of his species. His scales had faded from polished metal to dull gray. His eyes had lost their cold glow. But he was alive, because of the humans. He watched as a shuttle descended from the orbital station and landed in the courtyard below. The hatch opened, and a group of figures emerged. Some were human. Others were Karathi, their skin shifting with colors that Xyleth had learned to recognize over the past. 15 years, one of the Karathi stepped forward. She was tall and graceful, with patterns of silver and gold rippling across her skin. She wore a human military uniform with the insignia of a diplomatic envoy. "Hi, Commander," she said in flawless Velthrani. "I am Ambassador Maya. I was born on the transport ship you sent to Earth 15 years ago. My adoptive parents named me after a human word for illusion, because they said my arrival seemed impossible." Silas stared at her. He remembered ordering those children sent away. He remembered the message he had written, calling them worthless remnants. He remembered expecting the humans to fail. "Why did you come?" he asked. His voice was hoarse with age and exhaustion. "Why did you fight for us? After everything we did to you? After everything I did to you? Why would you risk your lives to save ours?" Maya's skin shifted to a complex pattern that Xyleth had never seen before. It was not a pure Karathi expression. It was something new, something influenced by human emotions, something that spoke of forgiveness and hope and unconditional love. "Because you gave us a gift," Maya said. "You did not mean it as a gift. You meant it as an insult, a burden, a way to humiliate the humans. But we chose to receive it differently. We chose to see those 2,000 children as a blessing." She reached into her uniform and produced a data crystal. 2,000 thank you cards, High Commander. One from each of us. We wanted you to know that we remember where we came from. We wanted you to know that we have built good lives, surrounded by people who love us. And we wanted you to know that we forgive you. Xyleth took the crystal. His hands trembled as he held it. "Forgive me," he repeated. "I do not deserve forgiveness. I threw you away, like garbage. I expected you to suffer. I wanted the humans to fail." Maya smiled, and her skin settled into a warm gold, the color of love. "That is why forgiveness is so powerful," she said. "It is not given to those who deserve it. It is given to those who need it. You carry guilt for what you did, High Commander. You have carried it for 15 years. I can see it in your eyes, in the way you hold yourself, in the weariness that goes deeper than physical exhaustion." She stepped closer and put her hand on his arm, a gesture of comfort that no one had offered Xyleth in decades. "Let it go," she said. "What is done is done. You cannot change the past, but you can change the future. You can choose to build something better." Xyleth looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at the data crystal in his hand. Then he looked at the sky, where human ships were maintaining a protective formation around his wounded world. "I do not understand your species," he admitted. "I have studied you for 15 years. I have watched you care for children that were not your own. I have watched you send thank you cards to your enemies. I have watched you sacrifice your lives to protect people who once wished you harm. And I still do not understand." Maya laughed, a warm sound that echoed off the broken walls. "Neither do we sometimes," she said. "Humans are not always logical. They do not always make decisions based on rational self-interest. They love people who do not love them back. They forgive people who do not ask for forgiveness. They hope for things that seem impossible." She looked out at the ruined city, at the smoke rising from destroyed buildings, at the wounded soldiers being carried to medical stations. "But that is what makes them strong," she continued. "They do not give up. They do not stop trying. They believe that tomorrow can be better than today, and they work to make it so. That is the human way." Xyleth was silent for a long time. Then, slowly, he bowed his head. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "it is time for the Velthrani to learn a new way." Maya's skin rippled with surprised yellow. "You would consider changing your culture?" "I have been High Commander for 300 years, Xyleth said. I have conquered worlds and crushed rebellions. I have ruled with strength and fear because that is what I was taught. But strength and fear could not save us from the Sithaks. Only compassion saved us. Only mercy. Only the willingness of strangers to die for people they had every reason to hate." He looked up at Maya. "I am old. I will not live much longer. But before I die, I want to build something that will last. Something better than what came before. Will you help me?" Maya extended her hand, a human gesture of friendship and agreement. "That is why we are here," she said. "Not just to save your world, but to build a future together. Humans, Velthrani, Karathi, and all the other species of the galaxy. A future based on cooperation instead of conquest. A future based on compassion instead of cruelty." Xyleth took her hand. His grip was weak, but his eyes were clear. "Then let us begin," he said. 50 years later, the Galactic Cooperative included 37 member species. Its capital was a space station built at the point where human, Velthrani, and Karathi space intersected. The station was called Hope. It was the largest structure ever constructed by any civilization. In the central courtyard of the main government building, a statue stood. It depicted a human woman cradling a Karathi infant, while a Velthrani soldier looked on from a distance. The woman's face was kind. The infant's skin was gold. The soldier's posture was no longer threatening, but thoughtful. As if he was learning something new, the plaque at the base of the statue read, "They sent us a burden. We made them a family." This is what humanity does. Every year, on the anniversary of the transport ship's arrival at Earth, representatives from all 3 species gathered at the statue. They exchanged cards, thank you cards, handwritten messages of gratitude and hope and love. The tradition had spread beyond the original 2,000 families. Now millions of people participated, sending cards to friends and strangers, to allies and former enemies. To anyone who had made a difference in their lives, Ambassador Maya, now in her 70s, attended every ceremony. Her skin still changed color with her emotions, though the patterns had become more complex with age. She would stand before the statue and tell the story of how she came to Earth, how she was raised by a family that chose to love her, how she learned that compassion was not weakness, but strength. And every year, she would end her speech with the same words. "They thought they were giving us garbage. They thought they were insulting us. They thought we would fail. But we did not fail. We took their gift and we made it into something beautiful. We took their cruelty and we answered it with kindness. We took their hate and we transformed it into love." She would look up at the statue, at the human woman and the Karathi child and the Velthrani soldier who was learning to see the world in a new way. "This is what we do. This is humanity." And across the galaxy, billions of voices would answer, "This is humanity."